and welcome back to my small little library. Today is a video that should have gone up a month ago and I just completely forgot over the end of last year. I forgot to upload my December wrap-up of 2023. I don't know how, but I think with just the complete end of the year content, I totally forgot. So I decided, you know what, I don't really know what to film for this week, so let's just, catch up with what I've read in December. And yeah, it wasn't like the best reading month I've ever had. I had better ones, but yeah, I did read a little bit, but not as much or as good as I would have wanted. So the first book I finished in the month of December was Pellucidar. That is by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I found this to be extremely underwhelming. I gave it 3 stars because these are entertainment novels, kind of. They aren't meant to be like these masterworks of fiction. They are really entertaining. They're just adventure, But this one reads just like the complete Martian series by Edgar Rice Burroughs. There was nothing really special about this one. This is the second part in the series. I don't own the first part. I didn't read the first part. I don't think it's necessary. It didn't really matter. But yeah, instead of going to Mars, here our main character went into the Earth's core and found some people there living there. And then, it's fighting, rescuing the women, all the things we already seen on The Martian. So yeah, 3 stars. I mean, it is entertaining. There's a lot of fighting, like action scenes, which I really, really like. But it wasn't anything special. And I think if you've read The Martian already, there's no reason to read this. Or if you read the Pellucidar series, I don't know what the name of this series is, but if you read the series that Pellucidar is the second part of, there's no reason to read the Martian series, other than if you love that so much that you want more of it. But they read extremely similar. So I wasn't really impressed, but I did finish it, and that was the last book from Edgar Rice Burroughs that I own that I haven't read yet. So I finished all of the Edgar Rice Burroughs books that I own, and I don't plan on buying any more. The next book I listened to was Hidden Games: The Surprising Power of Game Theory to Explain Irrational Human Behavior, and that is by Erasyoeli, I think, and Moshe Hoffman. I hope I pronounced those right. I'm not sure, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know what to think about this book, still not even, a month later. It is just, some people trying to explain weird things humans do. It wasn't really interesting, it wasn't really bad, it was just really average. Some things more interesting than others. Some things I really didn't understand why they were in there. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars. I didn't think it was a bad book, I just didn't think it was like the most interesting book to me personally. So yeah, I don't know. If you are interested in stuff like that, game theory and stuff, I think it might be interesting. For me, that was actually one of the few topics, non-fiction topics, I actually wasn't interested in, realizing that listening to the audiobook. So yeah, I wasn't particularly impressed. But also it wasn't bad, I can't really give it a bad rating because it was an informative book. So yeah, I don't know. 3 stars is just my go-to average. The book wasn't bad, but it wasn't amazing, Then I did finally listen to a really, really good book, and that was Exit Strategy by Martha Wells, the 4th book in the Murderbot series. I loved that book. 5 stars. The whole series is amazing. I already listened to part 5 this month, so for that review we will have to wait for the next wrap up, which will probably be the next video, maybe, because we are already in the middle of January, so it's coming faster than I would have hoped. But yeah, amazing series. Part 4, also amazing. I liked it. The story picked up a little bit again in part 4, so I really, really enjoyed that. But yeah, I just love the awkwardness of Murderbot. It's amazing, And then we have a physical book again, which I feel like there were too little physical books this month. But yeah, I did read a German book in English this month, and that is Inkheart. In German it's called Tintenherz, and I already read the German version, but I got this version, I don't know where, but it showed up in my shelves, which does sometimes happen that I forgot where I get books. But yeah, I didn't buy it. That much is for sure, because I tend to buy books in the language of the author, if it's English or German, because those are the two languages that I can speak in, like, or like read and speak in like kind of a good manner. I do know a little bit of other languages, but I don't really speak them particularly well. But yeah, this is Inkheart. It's like a really, really popular children's book about a family who, when they read out of books, the characters can come out and they can get into the book, and that brings trouble with it. And our main character lost her mother. She didn't know why, and the story is kind of an explanation of what happened to her mother. And yeah, it's a really, really nice book. It's a good adventure. I loved it as a child. Now, as an adult, I feel like, yeah, it's a children's book, but it's still a nice read, you know? It's like, even though there are things happening and it's not completely without drama, it's like a really wholesome book, I feel like. So I gave it 4 stars, rereading it. It actually is a really, really good translation, so if you read it in English, you are not missing much. I felt like it translated really, really well into English, which is kind of nice. I feel like the other way around sometimes, the translators struggle a little bit with particular books. So yeah, sometimes reading the English books in German is a little bit more on the like, I don't know side, but this one is really, really well translated from German to English, so yeah, I enjoyed that. Then I listened to another audiobook, which is called Cave of Bones. And that was really interesting because I already listened to another audiobook about the same cave. And that was just, you know, a really like scientific, what was found, what was the information, what could be gleaned from the information. That was alright. But Cave of Bones was a little bit of an interesting book because it's by Lee Berger and John Hawkes. And Lee Berger, he, I think it's him, or one of the two, was actually a part of the excavation, but he didn't think he would ever be able to see the caves because of his weight. And so he kind of chronicles what they find in the cave through his journey of losing the weight to be able to go into the cave and see them for himself. And just the whole chapter of him going through this really, really narrow caves and the feelings he has while going through that was incredibly interesting. I really, really liked the different perspective from the excavation, because I already know the facts roughly, but to get a different view with like a little bit of like personal struggle with it in there was really, really interesting. So I gave it 4 stars because it wasn't perfect, because obviously it's hard to find a balance between personal experience and facts, but I found it to be really, really interesting, and I liked the aspect of the personal experience. So 4 stars, really interesting. If you are into archaeology and just where the human is coming from and human evolution and stuff like that, it's a really interesting cave. They found out quite a bit about humanity and where we're coming from, so that was really, really interesting. After that, I wanted to read an adventure novel, and because of that, I picked up Race the Titanic by Clive Cussler. This is, I think, the 3rd or 4th book in the Dirk Pitt series. It's the first one I've read because I own part of the series, but not in the correct order. So yeah, that is the first one I owned, and I picked it up, and I was kind of confused a little bit. It's part of the Dirk Pitt novels. And it is about Numa, which is actually an organization the author created to not rescue, but like to bring ships up out of the sea and bring them into museums, or like research the history when it comes to the ships and stuff like that. So that was actually really interesting that he kind of that the organization actually exists, that our main character is part of. But the thing is, Dirk Pitt plays an incredibly small role in this book compared to all of the other characters, and I found that to be really irritating. All in all, it's that the America are going against Russian, and they want a metal to kind of like build this like epic weapon. And the metal, but they search for the metal, and at some point it turns out that it's on the Titanic, and so the quest to raise the Titanic starts. But the Dirk Pitt plays a really, really small role in that, because he only really plays a role to raise the Titanic, and only part of that, And then, you know, spies, politics, you know, all that comes with that. There he has also a really small role, but it's so little compared to all of these other characters that I was really confused why it's part of the Dirk Pitt novel. Like, yeah, he plays a role in it, but it's so small. So yeah, having read none of the other books in the series, which I will have to continue with at some point, I was a little bit confused. I still enjoyed it somewhat, so I gave it 3 stars. I personally felt the beginning of the book was a lot more interesting than the ending of the book, because the beginning was a little less political and more like research and finding stuff out, and then it gets really political. I really don't enjoy political stuff in books that much. So yeah, the ending and the like second half wasn't that interesting for me, but the first half I really enjoyed. So 3 stars. I met in the middle, you know. But yeah, I don't really know much about the series, but I will continue with it because I own quite a few of the books in it. Yeah. And then we're already at the last book that I read in December. As I said, I didn't read that much. I didn't have the greatest reading month in December. But yeah, the last book that I actually finished in December, because after this I did read half of The Stand, which are 600 pages, but I didn't finish it in December of 2023, so it isn't counting towards that. But I did finally read Elantris through. It took me 3 tries to get through this book, and I gave it 4 stars, which might sound funny. I think this one just lacked a little bit of the adventure that I feel like most of the other Brandon Sanderson books have. And it has a little bit too much political stuff in there for me. Just like the Dirk Pitt novel. I'm just not that much of a fan of like too much politics. I want a little bit more adventure, journey and stuff. This one is like heavily focused on politics. Not that his other books aren't, but I felt like there wasn't enough adventure in between the politics for me to stay interested. So I really liked the beginning. And then I always fell off in the middle. That is where I stopped reading the book a couple of times. And then the ending was really great, which is sad that I really struggled in the middle. But you know, it happens. Also, this is the first book that he ever published, so I feel like it's fair to say that he obviously got better with time. But yeah, I finished Elantris. It's really interesting. We have pretty much a political marriage, and when our girl arrives at the other country, her betrothed died, but she still is married to him because of the law there. And but they told her that he died, and she is in the city where Elantris is. Elantris is a part of the city, and there was a plague that happened in Elantris, and all of the people that lived there that were like kind of like godlike people, they fell from their godlike status, and they seemingly live in pain. And everybody kind of can get this curse, and then they get thrown into the city. And the story goes from there, and it's really interesting. It's just that the middle part really didn't keep my attention, but once I get over the middle part, it was really interesting. The rest of the story, just the middle part, not that much. But yeah, in the end, I gave it 4 stars. I did enjoy it. You know, it's just not as good as, for example, The Sunlit Man, which was one of my favorites, to be honest. But yeah, those were all of the books that I finished in December of 2023, which really weren't that much. But you know, it happens. We all have better and worse reading month. Also, as I said, I read half of The Stand in December as well, but because that book is 1,200 pages, I finished that in January, so the review for that will come in the next wrap-up. But I hope that even though the wrap-up is a month late, you still enjoyed it, and yeah, hopefully I will see you for the next video.